And I give the call to the member for Fisher.
Thanks very much, Deputy Speaker, and like many of my parliamentary colleagues, I congratulate you on your recent elevation to high office. Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise today and I object to this bill, and I'll give my reasons why. But before I do that, I do want to recognise and acknowledge that, that this is a conscience bill, that this is a bill where reasonable minds will differ. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to speak in this place since my demise of being Speaker. And it's times like this where it is very important, and it makes you recognise and really better understand how important it is to be able to speak on matters such as this. The first thing I want to say is that I implore and so far congratulate all members and senators to conduct themselves on a debate such as this in a respectful manner, as I'm sure that they will do. But this bill has a fairly innocuous title, and in some respects it is somewhat misleading. The name of the bill talks about restoring the territory's rights for effectively to be able to govern themselves. And at first blush, that would be difficult to argue against. I accept that. But it's more than that. It is much more than that. Because what it basically does is that it gives the territories the right to determine euthanasia, voluntary assisted dying. And that is the point for which I stand and rally against. Now, I openly admit that there are many people in Australia who have a different view to this. I accept that. Maybe even many on my own side of the chamber. But that's the beauty of a democracy in which we live. And it's a beauty of the ability to be able to speak freely on these sort of conscience votes. I believe I believe in the sanctity of life. I believe that states should only in the most exceptional of circumstances approve of the killing of a human being in instances like war or self-defence, to name two. Now, I'm making a lot of concessions here, Deputy Speaker, and one of the concessions is that I've never been in a situation where my mum, or I've had to watch my mum or my dad die a painful death. And so I accept readily that I'm coming to this view from somewhat, say, a fairly innocent approach. But belief is belief. And I would like to think that even if I was faced with that situation, my belief would not change. Now, before I go into the merits of the bill, I want to say, and I understand that the issue of voluntary assisted dying or euthanasia is very much a polarising one. Statistics have already been raised by members of this House of support of in the order of 80% of voluntary assisted dying. It's clear that voluntary assisted dying is in some form or shape has been enacted in all of the states in this country. Now that is true, but that doesn't make it right. And some people would say, well, you're an elected representative in the federal parliament, you should mirror the views of your constituents and the country. There is some truth to that, but that is not an absolute. There are some times when we, as as elected representatives, feel so strongly about something that many of us will draw a line in the sand and say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to go past that point. Now, those of us who were in the chamber several years ago when the marriage equality bill came up, I made a commitment to the people in my electorate that I would support marriage equality based on the will of the Australian people. And I did. I honoured that commitment. But we're talking about the lives of Australians. We're talking about the lives and the sanctity of life, which is, in my view, absolutely more paramount than me being a federally elected member of Parliament. And I believe, in my view, my conscience does not permit me to vote for a bill which some members will talk about. This bill doesn't legalise euthanasia. I accept that axiomatically this bill does not automatically mean that euthanasia in the territories is legal, that there would be a process that would have to be gone through in the territories' legislatures. I accept that. But I don't want to be one of those people that effectively authorise that to happen. On that basis, I oppose the passing of this bill. Now, I want to recognise once again the member for Solomon and the member for Canberra that kicked this debate off earlier this morning. But the justification for the passing of this bill, as referred to by the member for Solomon, I like the member for Solomon, I think he's a good, decent bloke. But on this occasion, I think he's being misled, because he started off by saying that this bill is not about euthanasia, but that's exactly what it is about. And the member for Canberra, who followed him immediately afterwards, she confirmed that this bill is absolutely about providing an entitlement for the territories to make laws in relation to euthanasia or voluntary assisted dying. I don't say that as a criticism of the member for Solomon. As I said, I think he's a good and decent man. But I do believe that he's wrong when he says that this is not about voluntary assisted dying. What those proponents of this bill do fail to recognise, Madam Deputy Speaker, they talk about the importance of territory parliaments to have some form of equitable arrangement as the states. Now, at first blush, that seems like a reasonable proposition to hold. But I would suggest constitutionally it is incorrect. Now, Section 122 of the Constitution provides for this Parliament the Commonwealth Parliament to be able to effectively have plenary powers over the territories. Now, that is inescapable. So this Parliament, unlike state parliaments, this Parliament has the power to pass laws in relation to the territories. The territories are a creature of this Parliament, of the Commonwealth Parliament. Now, the Commonwealth has admittedly enacted self-government acts for the Northern Territory, for the ACT and also Norfolk Island. Each of them have their own respective self-government provisions in their acts. But to give you some background for anybody who may be listening to this, on the 25th of May 1995, the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly passed the Rights of the Terminally Ill Act of 1995. On the 9th of September 1996, Kevin Andrews, the then member for Menzies, introduced the Euthanasia Laws Bill. The purpose of the bill was to provide that the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly, the Australian Capital Territory Legislative Assembly and the Norfolk Island Legislative Assembly do not have the power to make laws which would permit that form of intentional killing of another, called euthanasia, or the assisting of another person to terminate his or her own life. The bill passed with amendments following a conscience vote in the House of Representatives on the 9th of December 1996. It passed the Senate in March 1997. The passing of that Menzies bill, the Kevin Andrews bill, certainly overrode the Northern Territory's right to introduce laws to provide for euthanasia. In my view, it was the right thing to do then, because it protects the sanctity of life. Now, we in this chamber will never get an opportunity to pass laws in relation to voluntary assisted dying in any of the 6 states. For those in this chamber who believe in the sanctity of life, who believe that our most vulnerable should be protected, this is an opportunity for those members to defend that right, to defend that sanctity of life. Because if we give that up today, this week, however long this debate takes, it's gone forever. I believe as a community, as a society, as a country, we should be putting more money into things like palliative care to ease the suffering of people who are suffering and who are going to die. But there's a difference between providing palliative care and taking an active role in actually killing someone. And I know that this is not just an issue which is open for debate amongst people of faith. This is also an issue which is actively debated by some members within the medical profession who take an oath, a Hippocratic oath, to first do no harm, to look after people. And the concept of taking the life of a patient is an anathema to many of those medical professionals. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I encourage respectful debate. I'm sure that that's what will happen, as often happens on these conscience debates, and that's as it should be. I respect that this is an issue where fair minds will differ, but this is an opportunity for this Parliament, for the federal Parliament, to stamp its authority and respect the sanctity of life. We won't get many opportunities. This is a very, very important day today.
Thank you.